These are images of Virgo in the Egyptian zodiacs and on Dürer's star chart. All of them are easily recognizable. In most cases we see a female figure holding an ear of wheat. The only exception being the P2 zodiac, where we see Virgo without the ear of wheat and holding a balance scale instead, which is the symbol of the neighboring Libra constellation. In the upper zodiac of Athribis we see Leo's tail in Virgo's hand instead of the ear. A similar concept is, curiously enough, embodied in Dürer's drawing, where Virgo touches the tag of Leo's tail as if supporting it. The tag has a star on it, Spica, or Virgo's ear of wheat. Thus, the ear of wheat symbolizes Spica, the brightest star in Virgo. This star of the first magnitude is famous in astronomy, and used to be called Virgo's ear of wheat in the Middle Ages. This name must have been known quite well to the astronomers of ancient Egypt too, since they used the imagery in question rather explicitly in their zodiacs. Once again, we encounter close ties between the ancient Egyptian symbolism and that of late medieval Europe. Coincidence between them involves even the smallest details. The next zodiacal constellation is Libra, whose Egyptian depictions, along with Dürer's, can be seen here. In each of them we see the easily recognizable balance scale. The circle with either a human or a bird inside isn't part of the Libra, as Morozov used to assume. It stands for the moon in Libra. Let us study the picture of Libra from the Greater Temple of Esna. What we see here isn't just a picture of a balance scale representing Libra, but rather a woman that holds a scale in her hand. This female figure from the EB zodiacs bears no relation to the constellation of Libra, nor does it pertain to the neighboring constellation of Virgo, or we would see it located on the same side as the latter, whereas this figure is located on the same side as Scorpio. The actual constellation of Virgo in this zodiac is drawn elsewhere. It will later be shown that the female figure with the scales represents Venus in the secondary winter solstice horoscope from zodiac EB. However, in zodiac P2 we see a very similar symbol, woman holding a scale, to stand for something different. The female figure here symbolizes the constellation of Virgo, and the scale in her hand refer to the neighboring constellation of Libra. Let us now consider the Egyptian depictions of Scorpio, along with Dürer's version. The sign of Scorpio is easy to recognize in all of the zodiacs, since it has an elongated body and a curved spiked tail. In some of the cells we see other symbols near the sign of Scorpio. Let us say a few words about them in advance. In the zodiac OU, for instance, we see a crescent to the left of Scorpio, and two hieroglyphs. This refers to the fact that the moon had been in Scorpio on the day whose date is ciphered in the zodiac. Another example. In the zodiac EB we see a crocodile and a snake whose body assumes the shape of a boat underneath next to Scorpio. The boat sign, or shift sign, indicates that what we have in front of us is most likely to be a planet whose sign doesn't pertain to the date of the primary horoscope. It is obvious that if it is part of any secondary horoscope at all, it can only be that of winter solstice, since the winter solstice point is located on this sign of Scorpio, in the neighboring constellation of Sagittarius. As we shall learn from the dating of the EB zodiac, what we see here is Mercury in Scorpio on the day of winter solstice in 1394 AD. The next constellation is Sagittarius. Its pictures as taken from Egyptian zodiacs and Dürer's star chart can be seen here. In each case Sagittarius is represented as a centaur shooting in the direction of Scorpio. In Egyptian drawings, the equine part of the centaur would also sport wings. Dürer's drawing features a flaunting cape that resembles a pair of wings in their place. The winter solstice point has remained in Sagittarius for the last 2 millennia. One would therefore be correct to expect this sign to have additional symbols in Egyptian zodiacs, ones related to the secondary winter solstice horoscope. Firstly, one has to point out that Sagittarius almost always has 2 faces, one of them being human and the other leonine. This is most likely to be a reference to Mercury, human face, and Venus, leonine face, in Sagittarius or its immediate vicinity on the day of winter solstice. The fact that Venus often has a leonine face in Egyptian drawings will be considered in more detail later. Apart from that, the actual fact that the figure has 2 faces might be a secondary reference to Mercury, and possibly also Venus, which were considered 2-faced or double planets owing to the fact that they are both inner planets located closer to the Sun than the Earth. Therefore, they always accompany the Sun on its celestial journey and can appear on its either side, disappearing behind it in between. Thus, both of them can be observed from the Earth in 2 phases, as a morning star at dawn, on one side of the Sun, and as an evening star at dusk on the other. The 2 faces of Sagittarius are most likely to be a reference to Venus and Mercury in the secondary winter solstice horoscope. We have another astronomical hieroglyph before us, as was the case with Gemini. It should also include the symbol of the Sun, since the secondary horoscope in question explicitly refers to its presence here. Indeed, in most Egyptian zodiacs we see a tall hat topped by a circle on the head of Sagittarius, the circle being double in the round zodiac of Dendera. This circle is most likely to stand for the Sun in Sagittarius during the winter solstice. Bearing in mind that in the constellation of Gemini, the Sun during the summer solstice is represented by a circle atop the head of a constellation figure. In the long zodiac of Dendera, the Sun in Sagittarius is represented in yet another way, as bird perched on the wing of the equine part. A clearly recognizable transfer symbol also appears in Sagittarius, the boat beneath the figure. We see this boat in almost every Egyptian zodiac. This boat refers to the presence of secondary horoscope symbolism here, or planetary symbols shifted sideways from their position in the primary horoscope. The signs of Venus and Mercury are united with the Sagittarian figure. In the horoscopes of Athribis, we also see a star in the boat. Most probably, this is Venus, which is much brighter than Mercury. Now let us turn towards the representations of the Capricorn constellation. This constellation would be drawn as a fantasy animal with the tail of a fish and the front part of a goat. The figure of Capricorn is more or less uniform in all of the horoscopes Dürer's as well as the Egyptian ones. In the Eb zodiac, the Greater Temple of Esna, there is an extra human figure drawn as part of the usual Capricorn figure. This human figure stands on the back of Capricorn holding 2 objects. One of them is already familiar to us, although it is really tiny in this drawing, the erect pole with 2 slanted poles on its sides, which is a symbol of the summer solstice point present on the very same zodiac in Gemini, already of a larger size. Why do we see the summer solstice symbol in the opposite part of the zodiac in Capricorn? Apparently, the Egyptian artist tried to get across the idea that after the Sun passes the winter solstice in Sagittarius and enters Capricorn, it gradually begins to prepare for the summer solstice in Gemini, drawing it very small. This embryo of the solstice symbol would reach its full size in Gemini. This must be what the author of Zodiac EB tried to communicate by his drawing. Aquarius is the zodiacal constellation that we shall consider next. Its Egyptian drawings, as well as Dürer's rendition, can be seen here. We see Aquarius as a male figure pouring water from two pitchers that he has in his hands. In the round zodiac of Dendera, we can even see who it is that he pours this water over: a fish. However, the fish was one of the most widely used symbols of Christ. It turns out that Aquarius pours water over Christ, which makes the former a symbolic representation of John the Baptist. Indeed, this theory finds vivid proof in Egyptian zodiacs. In the zodiacs Dr, Dl, and Em, the sign of Aquarius is accompanied by a number of symbols depicting decapitation in one way or another. In the round zodiac of Dendera we see a headless animal next to the head of Aquarius. Whereas in the long zodiac of Dendera there is a headless male figure walking in front of the Aquarian figure. In the very same place, we find the picture of a man holding a knife in one hand and some animal by its ears in another, clearly with the intention of decapitating the latter. We see a similar scene in the zodiac Dr right above the head of Aquarius. The sole difference being that the male figure isn't holding any knife. However, it is possible that the knife became lost over the years, since the scenes coincide in all other details, and are found in the exact same place, the Aquarius constellation. Furthermore, in the zodiac from the Lesser Temple of Esna, we see 9 kneeling headless human figures surrounded by knives next to Aquarius. Once again, a clear reference to decapitation. One is reminded of the famous evangelical story about the dance of Salome before Herod and asking the head of John the Baptist as a reward for her dance. John was beheaded and his head was taken to Salome on a dish. A famous Christian holy day commemorates this event, falling on August 29, Julian calendar. It is a fasting day in the Orthodox Church. Therefore, the extremely ancient Egyptian symbolism turns out to be filled with Christian motifs. This appears to be the forgotten symbolism pertinent to early Christianity of the 12th–15th century. In the Dürer's drawing, Aquarius is holding a pitcher of water in one hand, and a towel folded in two in the other. It is possible that we see the towel hanging from the shoulder of Aquarius in other Egyptian zodiacs. This is quite in order if Aquarius is indeed John the Baptist, since a baptized person is wiped dry with a towel after the baptism. Incidentally, one sees men with a piece of cloth hanging from their shoulders in a similar manner in other Egyptian drawings as well. On the other hand, one often encounters figures resembling Aquarius in Egyptian temples, with a similar headdress, for instance, looking like 3 stems or feathers pointing upwards, with 2 broken stems at the sides, in a similar loincloth and so on. One sees several examples of such ancient Egyptian drawings. In all of the pictures, one sees that the figure of Aquarius has something hanging underneath its shoulder. It occasionally looks like a female breast, although the figure itself is distinctly male and sometimes even sports a beard. Furthermore, the female figures one sees in Egyptian zodiacs have their breasts drawn differently. It is therefore possible that the object in question is a piece of clothing. The only thing that remains beyond doubt is the fact that the odd bodily part or piece of clothing was definitely related to Aquarius as drawn in the Egyptian zodiacs. Let us recollect the evangelical description of John the Baptist's attire. And the same John had his raiment of camel's hair, and a leathern girdle about his loins. It is possible that the garment in question was made of animal hides, camel, for instance. At the very least, many icons and several pictures portray John the Baptist dressed in furs. Let us cite another interesting ancient Egyptian drawing. It is a colored fresco from the so-called crypt of Sennacherib in the Valley of the Craftsman near Luxor. We see a man wearing furs with a vessel in his hand, which looks just like the pitchers carried by Aquarius in Egyptian zodiacs. He is pouring water over some official, who sits in front of him accompanied by his wife. There are two figures of children near the legs of the chair. The entire picture is very likely to depict a family baptism of the husband, the wife and the children. It is quite possible that they're baptized by John the Baptist himself, dressed in furs. John baptized a great many people, not just Christ. Mark the way in which the fur piece is draped over the shoulder of the man with the pitcher, John the Baptist. One sees a great semblance between it, and the object that hangs over the shoulder of Aquarius in some Egyptian zodiacs, the round zodiac of Dendera in particular. As we shall see later, identifying Aquarius as John the Baptist is perfectly in line with the astronomical datings of the Egyptian zodiacs. According to these datings, all of the zodiacs in question date to a much later epoch than is commonly believed. By that time, Christianity was already a widespread religion, and Egypt was a Christian country. Here are the drawings of the Pisces and their picture by Dürer. At any rate, the constellation in question is represented by two fish figures which are often tied to one another with a string or a band. It is easy to recognize the symbol of this constellation in the Egyptian zodiacs. However, in some of the Egyptian zodiacs one finds no constellation figures whatsoever. This is most often the case with the zodiacs from Luxor, the so-called Theban zodiacs. In the zodiacs of the Theban type, the zodiacal belt may simply be divided into fragments containing astronomical symbols. Such is the zodiac from the crypt of Ramses VI, in the Valley of the Kings near Luxor. Decipherment of such zodiacs usually involves an additional study to determine the exact segments contained in a constellation, which usually complicates the decipherment a great deal. Among the Theban-type zodiacs, we find this one, which was shown earlier. Its exact location was not determined. In this zodiac we see a row of vertical lines separating the zodiacal belt into 36 segments instead of the constellational symbols. Each of the zodiacal constellations is separated into 3 parts. We see no symbols of zodiacal constellations here whatsoever. Therefore, one can only guess at which of the drawings might pertain to one zodiacal constellation or the other. Such ambiguity of the drawing naturally complicates the astronomical dating of the zodiacs of this type. Another example. Let us turn to the colored Theban zodiac. This is another zodiac of the Theban type, where we just see the drawings of the constellations that had contained planets on the date ciphered in the zodiac. The figures of all such constellations are collected in the middle part of one of the zodiac's halves. Here we see Leo, Scorpio and Taurus.